now.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to welcome our artists at today's discussion. Oh, beautiful. And I'm delighted to welcome each one of you who is today with us at the discussion on the intriguing role of fungi in art and science practices. And I want to say that this discussion is the final discussion in our public program, because today is the last day of the exhibition Fungal Entanglement that took place in Art and Science Center of Grytmoy University. So I hope that some of you have already seen the exhibition, who is in St. Petersburg. And for those who didn't, I think we will be talking about some of the narratives and definitely about two of the projects that were presented there. To start, I want to introduce our today's guests. First, Sarah Dater. Sarah is an interdisciplinary artist and dancer researching eco-interoception, or the deep connection between the health of her body and the earth. She works across media, experimenting with the way that concepts and ideas develop as her means of making shifts across printmaking, video, foraging, ink making, sculpture, virtual reality, and biomaterials. She is now living in Austin, Texas, after receiving her MFA in interdisciplinary art from Southern Methodist University and her BA in studio art and anthropology at Washington and Lee University. I'm happy to welcome you. Thank you for joining today. And next, our speaker is Laura Rodriguez. Laura is a Mexican multidisciplinary artist based in Netherlands. She works in the intersection of science, technology, and design. Her works integrate living systems and new media tools to reveal hidden connections, empathy, and kinship between species. She has a background in biotechnology and contemporary art. She has worked as an educational curator in biomedia and as a developer of academic courses on art and science. Laura has a bachelor's in biotechnology engineering from National Polytechnic Institute in Mexico, a master's in molecular biology from Skoltech Institute in Moscow, and a second master's degree in art and science by Grytmoy University in St. Petersburg. Laura, thank you. I'm so happy to see you both. I will briefly introduce myself. My name is Kristina Watts. I'm the head of curatorial department in Art and Science Center, and I was a curator of the exhibition that we will be discussing today. To start, I would like to say a few words about our exhibition in general and to state some questions that arose while I was working on the exhibition. And I hope that during our discussion today, we might find answers to some of those, or at least share our opinions on those problems. And then we'll have two talks by artists, after which you will have an opportunity to ask your questions, and we will have a discussion. So please don't hesitate to write your questions in chat. YouTube allows you to do it at the moment that they appear, and we will refer to them when we will have the discussion part. So I will start my brief intro. While I was working at the exhibition, I was, of course, deeply involved in the topic of exploring multifacedness of fungi. And being an art and science curator, it is natural for me to look at any non-human species from the post-humanist optic. As we all know, the post-humanist optic highlights the necessity to shift our relationship with the world from kind of anthropocentric gaze to something else. And then we have different theories who are suggesting different ideas. And being interested in this kind of post-humanist perspective in environmental practices, I often stumble on this feeling that despite for the last decade, many of us, curators, artists, philosophers, as well as scientists, were trying to explore ways out of this environmental crisis, we still didn't find way of kind of harmoniously coexist with others. And I feel that many propositions that were made in both fields of art and philosophy or science are still perceived by people, by many people, as kind of irrealizable or utopist. And while working on this exhibition, I came to this understanding that actually the fungi might be our answer, how we can today kind of merge the ideas from philosophy and realize them into life. Because fungi are known for their great decomposing and symbiotic qualities. And I think that both decomposing as ruining something old and symbiotic qualities as recreating together with someone is kind of the base of this transformational process that in philosophy we were searching. Here I want to say a few words about fungi and how, as a part of exhibition, we worked with them. So we had several narratives of looking at fungi, fungi as a material, fungi as metaphors, fungi as kind of base of communication between different species. And many of artists were trying to highlight the kind of duality or even multiplicity of fungi. And we saw fungi as kind of trickster objects because they're simultaneously visible and invisible. They part of legends and folklore, and also they pose so many questions to scientists that we can consider them mystery, because as far as I know, approximately around 9% of fungi are known to science today. So most of the fungal world is still a mystery to us. And because of this, they kind of evoke different feelings in us. To some, they're frightening, probably because their relations to death and this kind of creep of their bodies, dispersity of their bodies. But also, of course, fungi are something that are very attractive, that we are hunting, that we are monetizing, as for example, truffles. And they play a huge role in both human and non-human worlds. This huge fungal kingdom, of course, is not something that we will be able to explore today. But I would like to see this discussion the same as we look at physical mushrooms that we eat as fruit bodies. So the fruit bodies of mushrooms that we eat, are just a small part of fungal body, right? Because the most parts are hidden from our view. And I think some of the narratives that we will be discussing today, they're also popping up today from this huge mycelium network that we will discuss. And before we start, before I give the word to our beautiful artist here, I wanted to share one very inspirational quote So while doing my research for the exhibition, I was reading a book that actually also inspired the name of the exhibition. The book is called Entangled Life: How Fungi Make Our World, Change Our Minds, and Shape Our Future. And in this book, a biologist, Merlin Sheldrake, highlights a pivotal role of imagination that plays in the exploration, in the scientific exploration of mushrooms. And I will quote him and then say a couple of words. So the quote: "Microbial lives, especially those buried in soil, were not accessible like the bristling, charismatic above-ground world of the large. Really, to make my findings vivid, to allow them to build and to contribute to a general understanding, imagination was required. There was no way around it." So we all know that art has power to tell stories. Art has power to art gives us power to dream of impossible, and I find it so inspirational to hear that functions that we usually reserve to art are translated by scientists, by biologists, as something that is very important in his kind of scientific inquiries while working with mushrooms. So I suggest that today we just be in this utopist perspective, believe that art and science are kind of existing in this energy, and embrace fungi as our teachers, and try to find some of the lessons that maybe today we can learn. Thank you so much. Sarah, I give you the floor.
Okay, thank you. Oh. Can you see?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So as Christina said, my name is Sarah Dotterer. I am an interdisciplinary artist. I currently live in Austin, Texas, in the USA. I just received my master's in fine arts at SMU in Dallas, Texas, and very honored to be a part of this exhibition through Christina's support and curation. It's been amazing to see so many other artists using fungi in their work, who are also inspired by the metaphors they offer us for a new way of existing in the world. In mycelium-like fashion, I hope we can all continue to spread our fungi-related work throughout the world. So in the next few slides, I'll briefly take you through some of my fungi-inspired work from my master's program, as well as what is in the Fungal Entanglement show in St. Petersburg, and then a recent art walk that I developed in partnership with mushrooms that is here in Austin, Texas. So first, I'll start by saying I have a fungal imagination, much like the pathways of mycelium, filled with branched thought patterns and processes for making art, pathways that intertwine with different disciplines and media, concepts, and collaborators. And I will now explain how I got to fungi and why they are inspiring to me, not only as a metaphor, but also as a material, and kind of the different iterations that I've been through in partnering with them or being inspired by them. So it all started in 2022. I started a clinically administered ketamine treatment for depression. As with everything in my life, I heavily researched the treatment before I pursued it. I discovered the way that ketamine works in your brain. Basically, it creates more connections and stronger ones within your neurons. So it generates neuroplasticity, which is basically the ability to rewire thought patterns and generate newer, more resilient ones. Dr. Carlos Zarate from the Mood and Anxiety Disorders Program at NIMH says, a healthy neuron looks like a tree in spring, with lots of branches and leaves extending towards synaptic connections with other neurons. What happens in depression is there's a shriveling of these branches and these leaves, and it looks like a tree in winter. A drug like ketamine does make the tree look like one back in spring. And so at this point, I was also concurrently learning about psilocybin, which is a chemical in some psychedelic mushrooms, but also other compounds within, quote, regular mushrooms perform very similarly, increasing your brain plasticity, which opened the door to the intrigue of the whole fungi kingdom and kind of how I could partner with them in my art. So at this time, I was also learning about art making as a healing process from an art therapist that I connected with in Dallas. My art making was what I realized to be a coping or processing or healing tool. As a comic on the screen says, making art about nature and fungi for me specifically became my elaborate coping mechanism. I realized that the works I had been making previous to this time, to all of these discoveries I was making, mostly drawings and prints and videos of branching fractals and wintering trees, which look very similar to brain neurons, was some subconsciously emulating processes I was trying to make happen in my own brain, building those connections in my brain while I was also kind of building them and chartering them on a piece of paper or a video. So I was using my art making process almost as a form of neurogenesis, which is basically just the formulation of new neurons in your brain. So throughout all my work, I've thought a lot about healing and what that even really means. Healing cannot be some end goal, in my opinion. It can't be a finished piece of art. It is a process, which is why I think I love process-based art so much and why I'm less interested in the final product. Healing is cyclical. It is a breakdown and a regeneration over and over again, much like the cycles of a tree or a mushroom. It is something that comes in waves and over time changes and morphs. It is the ability to connect and to make connections. Something that I'm learning more about by studying fungi and the mycorrhizal connections that fungi facilitate between trees. So this diagram basically just shows a few different concepts and also art making processes that I've used that really kind of make use of this idea of cyclical processes, whether that's kind of patching and mending something with fiber or printmaking, the relief print versus intaglio, and then kind of understanding that I was doing these processes that were all about breaking down and regenerating at the same time I was learning about neurons and synapses and fungi and kind of their life cycle. So then for the work itself, I'll just take you quickly through kind of a chronological exploration of how I started experimenting with fungi. So at first I collected spores and I started from the very base level, inoculating petri dishes, and then I got a grow tent. And so I started growing my own mushrooms to understand their life cycle from start to finish. And so the first kind of exhibition where I showed fungi was displaying these petri dishes at different phases of growth. And then I would take the kind of dried fungi and input them into different fiber pieces that I cut areas out of to kind of sew them in and think about this idea of like patching and mending and healing and kind of all of these concepts that I just talked about. And from there, I then started to experiment with making almost like plaster molds or mycelium clay. So I collected a lot of different resources from other artists who were doing similar work and collected grow bags from a local farm in Texas. And I broke them up and then I added some moisture and put them into different kind of containers to see if they could grow and kind of hold shape. And then at the end of it, I didn't do it. It wasn't sterile enough, so it didn't actually really turn out very well. But this was kind of my experimentation with fungi as a material, less so a metaphor, and it didn't end up, working out the way I wanted. And so then the next exhibition where I used fungi was during my master's, kind of displaying different research around mycelium and fungi as a whole. So these are some oyster mushrooms in terrariums, again, showcasing different stages of growth. So I had some petri dishes again, and kind of educating like the different health benefits of mushrooms. And within this exhibition, there was also plants that are used for healing. Like snake plants are supposed to kind of rejuvenate your air quality and if you're living in an apartment or a house. So it was really about plants and mushrooms that contribute to our well-being. And then these paper pieces were collaborating with fungi in a different way. On the left, you'll see spore prints that I developed. And then the pink actually is ink made from a specific species of mushrooms that I painted. And then the different patterns on there are different neural networks and mycelium networks, and kind of drawing parallels between the brain and mycelium structure. And then this piece is, I took a class with a artist in the Pacific Northwest. And so these are different mushrooms from that area that created different dyes. So learning about how to collaborate with mushrooms to make inks and dyes and paint. And then this is a quick sped up video of my thesis exhibition for my master's, which is where I really started to tie all of these things together. The pattern on your right it's different mycelium networks, different slime mold networks, which is also something that I started to experiment with to understand how they charter pathways and can be this amazing intelligence source. And so this exhibition really tied together all of this in projection, in sculpture, in augmented reality, and virtual reality. So a lot of things were overlapping and overlaid to create this immersive experience. And all of this was really centered around the concept of eco-interoception, which was a word that I made up after learning about what interoception means, which is basically just the ability to decipher, oh, my stomach hurts, or my chest is tight, I'm anxious. So really learning about eco-interoception, on the other hand, is about learning about nature to better understand yourself. So this whole time I was looking at the structure of mycelium, the relationships that mycelium or fungi have with trees, to better understand my relationship to the natural world, and also really the structure of my brain and that idea of like neuroplasticity and generating more connections, or on the other hand, decomposition and kind of the breakdown of connections. And this screenshot is from a video that I created that, again, overlaps like slime molds, mycelium, fractals in trees, my own or brain networks, not my own brain networks, because I couldn't get access to that kind of imaging. But this screenshot really became the skin for different 3D objects in the virtual and augmented world, as well as actual printed fiber that was adhered to different branches within the exhibit. So again, this like metaphor for all these symbiotic relationships was actually physically put as a skin onto the different objects within the installation. So this is just another few images of the space. And this is the augmented reality. So again, you can kind of see how it becomes another layer of the physical exhibition that mirrors some of the similar patterns. A lot of these, like that little blue thing right there, is a lion's mane piece of mushroom that I 3D scanned for my studio, and then inputted with different imagery from that original video, the screenshot that I showed you. So layers upon layers, and then there's some more mushrooms that I scanned in over there. And so the augmented reality then translated into this back room where there was a virtual reality experience that again had a lot of the similar elements from the augmented reality. And this piece is also what is in the Fungi Entanglement show in St. Petersburg. And the video is also there, and it's right here. It's basically just what you see when you're actually in the headset. Again, different scans from the outside world of different natural elements and really kind of reimagining nature. And at the same time, I was really grieving a lot of what is going on with climate change and with nature, and kind of thinking about what is it going to mean to have some elements of nature only accessible in a digital or virtual world. Like, is that a future that we might have? And so how can you kind of grieve that, but also celebrate it and like create your own colorful natural world in these headsets? So there was a lot of different things I was thinking about when I was creating this, but a lot about the structure of mycelium and trees and root systems. And yeah, there was a couple different prompts within the virtual experience as well for people to consider. And this is just a screenshot from the exhibition in St. Petersburg. Again, similar elements from my thesis exhibition. And some tree branches that Christina facilitated collecting from the countryside, and then painting pink, which felt very, very exciting and very fitting. And then the last thing, a recent piece that I created at a preserve in Austin, Texas. Circle Acres Nature Preserve is a previous landfill, and Ecology Action is a nonprofit here that really rejuvenated the space, and it is now home to many, many different species, lots of mushrooms, lots of different animals and plants. And so we created a art walk that educates people about the life cycle of a mushroom, as they're also learning about kind of the space that has fruited and been through experiences of decomposition and decay, and really making that metaphor accessible for people. So this was the 3D models that I created, because each site had an augmented reality component that would then bring the concept to life as you're walking around, and you can kind of use your phone to navigate. So you'll see on the left some spores, and then the idea of like building a network, building a hyphal network of mycelium, and then the fruiting body, so the mushroom itself, and then way back there is the decomposition of the mushroom. And so this, for example, was the fruiting body site. So it asks you to kind of look around and reflect at how the site has, been through a period of decomposition, but is now kind of fruiting in its life, giving way to all these different species who are interacting with each other, and then kind of reflecting on what in your own life is maybe, previously decomposing and now giving way to new life, new opportunities, new ideas, new connections. And then the last video is just the actual augmented reality component. So this would kind of grow larger as you looked at your phone. And yeah, it was a fun way to bring the metaphor of mushrooms to life in the space that really is a metaphor for decomposition and regeneration. And that is all. So thank you for listening to my experimentation with fungi.
Thank you so much. I think that, yeah, when I started with this idea that it's very hard to actually research mushrooms because most of them are invisible. This is very cool that through digital technology, augmented reality or virtual reality, you're kind of making all of those invisible things of mushrooms more visible, and engage people in kind of researching their qualities that are usually hidden. And at the exhibition, when both I and our team were experiencing virtual reality that you created, it was very fun to kind of, in a way, swim inside of those like roots. So you were actually able to go down the earth to see at some places how the root system is dispersing, which was very cool. But also, the very interesting effect was that the space that you created, it was kind of really safe and calm space. And I wanted to ask you, when you were creating this VR and also AR, in terms of aesthetic and in terms of the feeling that all of us had while experiencing VR, because usually, VR might be very disturbing for a person because you don't feel safe in VR because your body is in physical reality and kind of your mind is in digital. But here, all of us like didn't want to go out of this because you just wanted to delve in this. So, were you thinking about this effect? Did you try maybe to recreate this safety features or something?
That's interesting. I think I didn't think about creating a safe space necessarily, but I think that by nature of me doing this through a very like it was a very much a healing process for me. And so I think I created the space that I would want to kind of explore these different themes and visual concepts. It ended up being kind of this exploratory world, and I think the colors maybe helped that a little bit. They're pink and colorful, but I think there's also the blue sky, and there's also an audio element, which I didn't really talk about, but it's a ton of different nature inspired noises, sound recordings, field recordings of wind and water and different birds. And so I think that component probably also helps with kind of making you feel a bit relaxed, hopefully. But I think that also one of the things that I had to think about is that VR can be really disorienting for people. And so at least in the exhibition in Dallas, I chose to put out seats or chairs because I was just worried that, it can obviously be just disorienting. So I think that also contributes, whether you're sitting or standing or you feel comfortable physically at the same time.
Yeah, that is definitely true about the way we exhibit a virtual reality. But the interesting thing was that we were standing at the moment. So I think maybe not trying to, but being in this state of process of healing, you actually created something that might help to heal somebody else. And that's very beautiful. So. Mushrooms and medicine, I think, is very big topic, and what I find very intriguing is that actually, even before we found out the kind of antibacterial qualities of fungi, many indigenous communities were using this kind of mold and we're kind of intuitively using the technology that we're using today through being with mushrooms. And I think it's very interesting that both of you, by doing completely different works, both of you kind of went to this topic of medicine and fungi, their kind of interconnectedness. And if, Sarah, you were kind of doing it on your own experience, I think that Laura is more imagining of what we can do. And I would like to give you the word, Laura, to talk about your project and maybe some other projects that you were creating throughout your career.
Thank you, Christina. Again, I'm very happy to be here. I'm always Yeah. Do you see my screen? Sorry.
Yeah.
As I said, I'm always happy to be participating in projects that you're organizing. I admire always your curatorial work, and I feel honored also to meet Sarah now. And I think that the magic work again, because when she was also telling about her experience of healing, I think that it make a little bit of click with what I have been experiencing with slime mold, or that gave the name and the idea of this project that is called Moldfulness, that is from the game word of slime mold and mindfulness. So as you say, I'm an interdisciplinary artist. I have a background in molecular biology and in bioart. And well, I live in St. Petersburg in Russia during 8 years. But originally I'm from Mexico. And my first encounter with a slime mold, that now I need to make a disclaimer, slime mold is not a mushroom and it's not a mold. I will go a little bit deeper into that in the next slides. But my first encounter with it was in 2018. And I was culturing in my home. I tried to make different projects with it, but it never crystallize in something specific. But slime mold traveled with me when I went out of Russia, when I went back to Mexico, and then when I came back here to the Netherlands. The only project that came in that moment or during those years was a workshop for general public to meet slime mold, to culture it. And the main topic there was like migrant Physarum, because it's moving, and we would put it above different maps, different routes. So it was like this migrant organism that will teach us different ways to navigate. So when I came to the Netherlands, I felt as well these different circumstances that surrounding when you migrate to another country and start from zero. So I was like, okay, maybe it's time again to make connection with the slime mold. So I start working with it again. And in this presentation, I will show you basically just that project that I have with the slime mold. So let me start by presenting it, because it has been considered part of the realm of mushrooms, and I don't blame, because scientists in the beginning thought that it was very similar. They put it in the phylogenetic tree with fungi, but after more studies they realized that it's its own branch. They share some qualities. For example, the sporulation, when they are in stress conditions, they can form spores until they find a better condition to grow. But yeah, they separate around 2 billion years ago. Then we have over here animals, so like somewhere in this tip there should be humans. But the slime molds, they are a big amount of these unicellular organisms that are being still studying. So they are now part of the Mycelium and part of the protist kingdom. And they are very colorful, very different, and sometimes some of them have even appetizing names. For example, the pretzel slime mold, and we have this one, there's the chocolate tube slime mold. And in my case, I start working with Physarum polycephalum, that is the one that is known as the blob, or mostly studied in science and also in artistic studies. And a slime mold the color is yellow when it's in the plasmodial shape that is visible to the human eye. It likes the humid and dark spaces. And they have the same similarity that other slime molds with mushrooms, that they generate spores when they are in conditions where there is not enough food, or is too dry, or is too wet. And they are single cells. It means that it's only one huge membrane with a lot of different nucleides inside in each own membrane. That's why it's called polycephalum, like multi-headed. it has a lot of brains inside of this big cell. So a slime mold, Physarum polycephalum, has also different states of living. The plasmodial, that is the yellow that we see growing, sometimes when the conditions are very good, it grows like 1 centimeter an hour. So sometimes you can see it even if you are working and then get distracted, and then you see that it grew in certain direction. Then when the conditions are not so providing enough resources for the slime mold, it goes to a state of sclerotium that it can also, the sclerotium is a structure that is also used for fungal mycelia. It remained like that because in the beginning, slime molds were put into the category of fungi. Therefore, we still have this confusion between them. But again, who makes these categories, right? Scientists, sometimes 50 years ago, without all the resources, like in nature, in our over-connected and super-connected world, well, these categories are just for our brain to learn more about it. And now I would like to talk just very briefly about the cycle of life of the slime mold, because it starts like the amoeba. It can be in a cyst or also with flagellates, and then when both two cells bind together, they can start to form the plasmodium, and if the circumstances are not correct or they need to rest to reproduce again, they go into the sporangium. However, something very interesting about slime molds is that they divide the genetic material into 8 minimum different types of haploid cells. It means like they can have like 8 different types of, in a human parallel will be like genders, and some slime molds can be even like 500. And then when 2 of them complementary find themselves, they bind together, and then they can make the sporangia again. That grows in this kind of tendril structures. And inside, in this video, you can see like all the multi-headed nuclei moving around inside the single cell to move towards one direction, and they move by chemical reactions and electric reactions. So something that we have discovered about the slime mold, Physarum polycephalum, is that it finds in its own food. It had strategies as a network to move around and find resources. And it has been biological model to study networks and even artificial intelligence. For my technoscientific tale that I'm going to share with you, there are 2 main characters. One is the human brain and the other slime mold. The brain has around of billions of neurons that they interact with each other with chemical reactions and electricity to make our memories, so we can also make decisions and we can formulate thoughts. However, the brain's also going downfall when we are in certain circumstances like stress, when we have anxiety, or maybe some of you can relate with these sleepless nights when you are thinking, regretting that thing you say 4 years ago that nobody remembers anymore. But in your brain, you bring it back and you feel all the emotions in that moment. As the same as Sarah, I think I am in a process of healing, but also understanding our own brain. Brain have different patterns of thinking. They are shaped by biology, genetics, but also by experiences. So in my process to understand my brain better, I was thinking in the way I think, the metacognition. That is one path to reformulate your neurons paths, the connections that you do. An interesting fact about our memory is that the more you remember something, less accurate your memory or your neural connection becomes. Because more you strengthen that pathway, more it connects to something else. So less you remember, more you remember something, less accurate it is. So I was thinking about how to think better, because my brain sometimes go in a spiral of anxiety, of imaginary scenarios that never happen, but I feel like already happened, and you feel the emotion, and sometimes even affects your own body or your own metabolism. And there is when slime mold comes to the game, because slime mold can find the optimal pathway to solve some problems. It also moves with chemical reactions and electric reactions, just like my brain, our brains. And something that was triggering for this project was the study of slime mold understanding the environment. Here is the slime mold in the third image in the center. And it was an experiment of decision making. There is the oatmeal, the oat that is the favorite food of slime mold. There was one in the top or in this side and 3 in this other side. And it detected cues of the environment to understand where the resources were bigger and then go towards it. So it's analyzing the environment. It is making decision to optimize resources. And it's basically thinking a little bit better than me sometimes, because sometimes I catch the cues of the environment in the wrong way and I'm wasting my resources in imaginary scenarios that do not exist. So I decide, how can I learn from slime mold? So slime mold becomes my mindfulness teacher. Mindful meditation is something that I have been working for, experimenting my own brain, trying to be conscious of how I am thinking, what are the triggers, and that's more like the introspection. But as a scientist, I also wanted to know more about the chemical part happening in my brain. And for that, I use an electroencephalogram machine device that is portable. Is not as sophisticated for making psychiatric or neuroscientist studies, but enough to be connected to some apps or to create your own app that measures the different brain waves that our brain has. So for example, when I connected it to an app that measures your brain waves in alpha and beta wavelength, it can tell you in how many seconds or how many moments you were in the mindful state for humans that has been established as the mindful state. And it gives you coins. So for example, in 5 minutes meditation, I got 5 coins and I was considered a diligent student for the mindfulness. And then I decided to connect the electrodes to the slime mold itself, to detect now the electric activity that it was creating. And I realized that it was possible having the same type of electric electrodes from the EEG device. So I decided to connect it to the Mindful app, where it actually got 9 coins and it got a better status than me. He's a practitioner. So it was meditating better than me, the slime mold. Of course, it is, I don't mean that it's in mindful state, but if you compare it to the mindful state that we have categorized for humans, it is in this wavelength. So this makes me think in the power of our mind, the power of our own thoughts, how you direct them. And in the current world where the brain-computer interfaces become a reality, nowadays we can have more access to devices, or they are in production, devices that we can regulate with our brain. And the fact that we will be interacting with machines only with our thoughts creates a critical moment to understand our thoughts better. If you will be interacting only with your thoughts with an AI, for example, or with an automatic machine that creates different actions, it's important to have a self-regulation. In this case, I'm talking about, for example, the prosthesis that can be connected to your own brain to regain certain movement. So the mindfulness practice have been studied as a way to self-regulate your thoughts. In this case, maybe we can try to learn from slime mold through software and the wetware that in this case is our brain to have a better connections even with machines. So slime mold here is teaching us about ourselves, but also to create maybe better connections to others. The first part of the project is to generate a less anthropocentric or more slime mold-like interface. When we are training our brains to think different, we usually are seeing interfaces like this cube, and you're thinking, move to the right, and then it detects that your brain is saying to the right, so you move it. But life is not like that, that you just say, I'm moving to the right, and then it happens. So I developed through Touch Designer different protocols. So when you are thinking, there makes a comparison with the electroactivity of a slime mold. So it moves in different ways that are not just south, north, east, and west, but more radial. The ultimate part of the project, that is the one that is still in process, is to create the space or machine-brain connections where the user, in this case human, can wear the EEG device to meditate, and if the meditation or the state of meditation is kind of accessed, then the machine gives the food, the humidity, the temperature exact to produce the slime mold to grow, and it regulates through a symbiotic relationship. So when you are in the mindfulness state, it nourishes the slime mold. The first part is to invite the user to have the mindful state. That's what we presented in the prelude here in the gallery. And the general idea of the project is to cultivate empathy towards other agents and raise mental health awareness by taking care of a non-human that at the same time is taking care of your own mental health, so we can have better relationships with other entities. So we presented now the prelude that is mindful meditation that invites you to think as a slime mold in the gallery. I want to say here that I want to say my greetings and my gratitude to Carlos Munoz, that he is a collaborator in this visualization. He's a computational biologist he's making his master's degree in Germany. And with him, we were collecting these movements of slime mold during different filters. So far, the meditation that is in the gallery, I will talk a little bit more about it, is kind of the fluidity of my growth with a slime mold and the growth of a slime mold, because I was culturing for many years. Sometimes you evolve in this relationship that sometimes you need to leave a party earlier because you need to go and feed your slime mold, or then you forget to feed it, and then it's like, oh my god, I kill it. So it is an interesting relationship. And then when it is stopped to be something I'm taking care of it, but actually an entity that can take care of my mental health if I put enough attention, the relationship dynamics change. So I'm going to put just a few seconds of the meditation. Let me see if you give me a heads up if you can hear the sound.
Close your eyes and imagine yourself in a lush forest, where the air is alive with the symphony of nature. In this enchanted space, you begin a transformative meditation to embody the teachings of the wise slime mold. Embrace unity in diversity. Feel the rich diversity of the forest around you. Picture yourself thriving and dancing with the varied life forms. Embrace the unity in this diverse ecosystem. As you become one with the vibrant tapestry of existence, adapt to change. Sense the gentle breeze of change, just as the slime mold gracefully weaves through ever-shifting conditions. Inhale the essence of adaptation, allowing yourself to flow effortlessly with the winds of transformation. Connect with everything.
Okay, I will go just to some of the verse or paragraphs in the meditation that make resonance with me very shortly, because I think we will talk about it a little bit more. But I think the adaptation is something that is that was a challenge for me when you are moving from one place to another, when your brain is making all these scenarios. You need to let it flow a little bit more and trust in your abilities to adapt. And a slime mold, as a single cell, has all these abilities that when there is not the right conditions, it goes to the sporangia and then it waits. And in our society, when they are telling you all the time, be productive, you need to be productive all the time, this need of do something all the time. And it's like, maybe sometimes now I need to be a little spore. I will take care of my day activities, and the 5 minutes for focusing my breathing. That 5 minutes is like, sounds very small, but when you are in this trap, taking 5 minutes just to breathe, it feels like eternity, or like you don't have time for that. But it's something that we're doing all the time. So it's part of being present, not in the past with all the regrets that it can take, or the nostalgia, not in the future with all the imaginary scenarios that it might not happen. And also the release of attachments and the coming together, because when two slime molds find them together, they just bind. There is not this high sense of ego or individuality. They bind together and they go by the direction. And if there is not enough resources as well, they can separate after they make the exchange of genetic material. So it's also this idea of releasing attachments, preconceptions that I think in the world where we are a globalized structure is also necessary to have the ability to deconstruct, to be more empathic towards other humans being with different backgrounds, with different stories, and have this ability of embracing, as well as navigate without a central authority that I think that is part of the new models of what we are learning from mushrooms as well, to decentralize the structure of power. And then if you translate it into yourself, I can also maybe decentralize my preconception of thoughts that I thought that they were like super structured, and then you let it go a little bit easier. So I took a lot of time, so I'm going to be just quickly about this, and I would like to invite you in the Zoom and the persons in the YouTube to take a big breath with slime mold, to kind of find the moment here after the nerves of the presentation. And we will inhale with the slime mold and then very slowly exhale. So here we go. Inhale. And hold it for a moment. And very slowly let it go. Thank you for your time.
Laura, thank you so much, especially for this moment of slowing down. So I wanted to ask you a question about, I think, the whole your art practice. So how do you by being a scientist, right? And you have kind of throughout your education, you had more time to be kind of in the labs and to be with scientists and to learn these methodologies and techniques that are reserved for scientific community than for our community. And by being a scientist and choosing to work within art and science field that is much more broad and speculative. How do you kind of able to leave so much space for your imagination and for this I don't know, how do you give yourself an ability to dream so much about our future or other scenarios? And does being a scientist help, or on the other hand, kind of prevents you from going wild?
Thank you. I think that it depends on each experienced person, but in my personal, in the beginning, it was hard to break this idea of speculation or fantastic worlds, because I was focused a lot in the protocols. I was scientist. Whatever research you need to do is for specific product. But then there was this like fight inside of me, but then I give myself permission to explore the other areas, and then it becomes clearer that everything is connected. So there are strings that you can pull. For example, it doesn't mean that it was the only right way to make a product for science, because it's also under the strings of pharmas, of companies, of governments. So I was like, okay, there are even more critical way to approach. And I think the only, the more ethical and more critical way is the combination of both of the art and science. So that's when I start to give myself permission to integrate other point of views, and then also from the perspective of other organisms. There is an anecdote that Eduardo Katz mentions when he presented Alba, the GFP bunny that is glowing. That some people thought there was like a monster because it's glowing. But then for reptiles or for bats, we are also glowing because they can see infrared, but our eyes cannot see infrared. But if we touch, we have certain warmth that is infrared. So for some creatures, we are glowing as well. So it just depends the perspective, and I think that's what art gave me, the ability to change from, or to see other perspectives. The same thing that slime mold kind of gave to me, the flexibility.
Thank you so much. Yes, I think the huge probably power of art is to make something familiar unfamiliar again, and then we have a place to explore, because usually, right, when something is quite automized for us, we see it for many times, and probably we know a lot of I don't know, facts around the phenomenon. Sometimes we don't ask the right questions, and artists help us with it. And also, I think this is what philosophy tries to do. And I have a question for Sarah. So in your zine that was based on your thesis, you have kind of mapped out a lot of different philosophical and culturological motives. And I wanted to ask you, why do you think so many philosophers and thinkers are so fascinated with fungi and kind of trying to use it as a metaphor or as another way of look at things?
I think it's exactly what you said earlier, in that they are partly invisible. And I think that invisibility gives us, like you said, this really beautiful space for imagination. But at the same time, they are also very concrete, and or not concrete, but they are literal. I mean, they do exist and we can see them more often as a fruiting body, as the mushroom itself coming up from the ground. But even then, they're still hard to spot, and they're kind of mysterious, and it's unclear a lot of the role that they play in our ecosystems. Obviously, we do know, their ability to break down pollution and decomposing like bodies and stuff like that. So we do know things, but there's a lot that we don't know. And I think that lack of knowledge creates a lot of space for imagination. And I think that, like all movements in art, different concepts arise when we need them, kind of like the collective needs them. And I think that in a world that is very broken down in a lot of different ways and kind of decomposing, we are looking for a guide to help us rewrite our current reality. And I think that mushrooms give this space to our imaginations of interconnectivity and of us, working together with other species and decentralized intelligence and all of these different capacities that they have, and kind of the magic that they offer. I think it's like really hopeful for people. And I think that's why I have loved learning about them and working with them and working about them, is like, obviously in my own mental health journey, just understanding that it's okay to break down and to then regenerate. And like, that is actually a cycle of life, and that is, necessary to give way to new ideas. And so I think in all those ways, they give us a lot of space for the imagination to make new connections.
Yeah, that's so true. I think for me, it's also very reassuring that there are some other kind of nonlinear ways to exist, both in the idea of our body, and here we can think of the differences of our bodies and how we can define ourselves in kind of non-binary ideology, because the body of the mushroom, right, it's very dispersed and it has so many different kind of manifestations when it grows. And also, I think that the symbiosis and the ability to kind of interconnect with other species by redistributing resources, or by sharing some qualities and benefits, it's something that probably should be right, the basis of our communities. And this is what I personally really like about mushrooms. And for me, it's maybe one of the most important lessons. And I would like to ask both of you this question. What do you think personally for you is the most valuable lesson that we can learn from mushrooms, from fungi, and from slime molds? And before you start answering, I wanted to say to our audience that it would be nice to write your questions in the chat now if you have any. And yes, I don't know, Laura, maybe you can start.
Yes, thank you. I think that it's not only from slime mold, but from all the organisms. The main thing will be what I already mentioned, the ability to change the perspective, the human perspective that sometimes is bind or limited by our own experience, that sometimes is limited even biologically. So the attempt, at least the attempt to think as someone else, even another human, is very difficult. But the attempt already increases the level of empathy that we can have. That I think that is one of the crises that we are facing as world. That I think is the basic for improving a lot of our relationships, not only between humans, but also with the plants, the bacteria, the viruses, that all has a specific role that is difficult to see if you are seeing it only as single individual that is isolated, but we are not. We are like in a big soup that everything is going inside and going out, because the air is coming inside, the proteins that you ate in the morning as in your omelette are now the energy that you are using to hear me through vibrations in your bones, and then it will become part of something else. So we are in this process of changing, and I think that the ability to see other perspectives is what we can learn from any other organism.
Yeah, you said it better than I could, but that's kind of my answer as well. But I also think, I think specifically the image of a mushroom growing from decomposing matter is something that's like gross, or like, that's something that I would maybe think it's gross, like, ew, and it's growing into this fruiting body and this beautiful thing that maybe only lasts a few days, but then it has the capacity to regenerate maybe a few weeks later, and its mycelium, its roots, its structures is really what upholds through time and is really invisible, but is always growing and always like changing, and I think, and connecting with other species and transferring knowledge and resources. I think just the visual of like the life cycle of a mushroom is like really inspiring for a lot of different facets of my life and thinking about the outside world as well.
Yeah, talking about this decomposing qualities, I can't make myself not to wonder about, Laura, your maybe understanding of your experience with fungi and death, being a part of Mesoamerican culture and culture that perceives death much differently than Western European community. And I know that you have created several projects about it. Does it kind of interest you, this idea of decomposing and rebirth, and how do you see it from the cultural point of view?
Yes, I'm fascinated with the process of death that is part of life. That's why also mushrooms are very iconic, and I like how is this transformation that is just the reconfiguration, is carbons, nitrogen, oxygen, that it can form the composing, but also the whole rose that you receive in your birthday. So it's just the same matter, just different configuration, and that's the beauty of the cycle. In Latin America, also the view of death, not only as a process but as an experience, is a way to celebrate life as well. In Mexico, we have the Day of the Dead. That is not precisely that we're celebrating death, but celebrating the life and the death that is part of it. In one of my projects with plants, that is where I have been working in the last couple of years, I removed the cells from the plants, remaining only with the protein structure, the cellulose. You can see still the shape of the flower or the plant, but it's not considered alive anymore. because there is not the structure of cell. And there was the idea of what I'm also a bunch of cells as well. So what is after we remove all these little structures? So we have these strategies to think about that with traditions, with religion, with different other things. So I wanted to expand this idea of anthropocentric view of afterlife to other species, and what will that mean? How expanded it can also make a weakness in the idea of only humans have an afterlife, and moreover, why humans should have an afterlife. And I think that from a biological point of view, the afterlife is the continuous cycle, and then death is not this enemy of life, but just another way to experience. And actually, that's one of the mindful approaches to be present when you're dying. Like, you are practicing all the time to be present, and you're practicing the feeling your breath, feeling your thoughts, so you can be aware and present when you die, and not regret of, oh, I'm dying, regret of I should have done this or that, but experiencing that for me is also very interesting. And we can try to experience that through observing the life cycles of other organisms.
Yeah, this is an important part of life, definitely. And what is interesting, so we were making our exhibition in the partnership with the studio of podcasts, which is called Talk Studio. And one of the episodes that they released was about the shamanistic rituals with psilocybinic mushrooms, and the hallucinogenic, sorry, this is hard for me to pronounce, qualities of those mushrooms. And it was said that one of the most recurring experience while infusing yourself with those mushrooms is actually the experience of dying. So our mind is always wondering about kind of what will happen, probably, and this is one of the ways that goes way back to shamanistic practices and this understanding of what will be with us after death. But I want to go from this idea of death to idea of rebirth more. So we would end on kind of a positive note. And I wanted to ask you both, what do you think, like, do we, three of us, believe here that mushrooms can play a pivotal role in kind of ecological reconstruction of Earth and of our ways to have relations with nature? Do you think that mushrooms in the future will play a big role? Maybe Sarah, you can start with your opinion, and then Laura can proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to think so. I think I don't know the exact number, but I was recently looking at the lifespan of mosses throughout time, and they've been around for like billions of years. I don't know the exact year, but I mean, they've survived, fungi have survived through so many cycles of our Earth. And I think that we should look to them to kind of aid the survival of our Earth now, given that they have been through so many cycles. And I think they have so much capacity. I mean, without them, we wouldn't be alive right now, because they break down so much matter and aid the health of our soil. And I think I've learned a lot being in Austin. There's a startup here called Funga that is looking into the way that we can partner with mushrooms to store carbon and to reduce carbon emissions. And so I just think there's so many ways that now with technology increasing that we can partner with them in different ways to kind of aid climate health and thinking about even with sustainable materials. And obviously there's certain ethical implications of partnering with other species and sometimes not partnering with them, just using them. So there's things to consider, but I think there's interesting work being done with recyclable materials, with fungi, and I recently was looking into like mycelium leather. Like there's just a lot that can be done, I think, in different sectors to kind of leverage the knowledge of mushrooms, but also the actual them as a material. So yeah, I'm hopeful, but
Lara, what do you think?
Yes, that in that case, I also am hopeful that it can work for starters with these biomaterials that has a lot of possibility. Also, like I think you mentioned in the beginning, like the percentage of mushrooms that we have studied, and like there is still a lot that we haven't. And because these invisible connections are underground, when I think of mycelium, I always imagine like how everything is connected just a few centimeters under the ground. So we are actually just a little part outside wandering, but mushrooms are all around. So there is also the bioremediation that I think that it will become very important in the recovery of lands that we have urbanized or we have overused. There is the problem with soil that do not grow the crops that it grew before because we attack it completely with pesticides and things like that. And mushrooms are in kind of the hopeful warriors that will help us in this process to rehabilitate the soil. So yeah, I think there is a lot of possibilities. I mean, as Sarah said, they has been here for a very long time and they are not going anywhere. So we need to adapt to them as well.
Yeah, this is so fascinating, right? How mushrooms can be alive when nothing else can. Kind of after some nuclear explosions and those kind of things, after radiation. And I actually read that now mushrooms are being studied for their abilities to kind of reduce the radiation because they can metabolize it in some ways that reduces the radiation in soil and in atmosphere, which is I don't know, so interesting and makes us so hopeful about our future with them and how we can use them to make our living more kind of sustainable and equal to other species. And I think this is also what Anna Zinn in her book, I think in English it's called The End of Life. In Russian it's called Life at the Ruins of Capitalism, which I really like how it was translated. But basically, yeah, in her book, right, she's talking about this mushroom matsutake that is only grown on the places where the forest was cut down, and before the forest can regrow, the matsutake mushroom starts to grow and kind of after it revitalizes the soil. Pines and some other trees can come after it. And this is, in her opinion, kind of the metaphor of capitalism, like we throughout the capitalism, right, deforested our earth, and now we need to learn from mushrooms how to make it revitalize it and make it alive again. We have one question in the chat. So also we have some comments, Sarah, to you, that it was very nice to hear the personal story behind your work. It's going from a person who saw your actual show. And a question that we have, I will read it. Thanks, it was interesting and informative. I heard that mushrooms are used as innovative material in architecture. Do you think that in the future we can live in the houses made out of mushrooms? Who would like to answer?
I think it's Philip Ross. I don't know, you all might know, but I think that there's one artist who has been around. I think he started doing this work in like maybe the 80s, but has created, I believe it was a piece at the MoMA PS1 in or I think it was there in New York. But anyways, he created these kind of mushroom blocks that then turned into bricks that then were assembled into a structure. And I know there's a lot of building materials being, I think there's also 3D printing being done with mycelium. So I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I don't know in terms of the moisture component, because that can often like reactivate things. So I don't know how that would work, but I feel like it's possible.
Laura, do you have some thoughts? Would you like to live in a mushroom house?
If I will like, huh? Probably, but yeah, I will also be aware of the process and how if there is a brick, because I also imagine that they add many different things to make it resistant. So is it really more ecological friendly or not, or things like that? I also remember a pavilion in, I think it was Germany, where it was the mushroom, but it was growing. So it was a huge pavilion. Because it grows, it also deteriorates. So definitely some additives. But there is technology already, that, as Sarah said, as on 3D printing the bricks. I definitely think I will look at the house in a different way.
Should you be aware of the spores or some other shrooms activities? So it was very funny, small insight in our exhibition. It was very funny that while doing the exhibition, because in our gallery, next to it, we have bio art laboratory, where our colleagues are actually conducting some experiments. We were not able to present actual mushrooms or alive mushrooms in the exhibition because of the spores, basically. But still, the mushrooms were so much stronger than our attempts to not let them within the exhibition, that we have multiple cases of mold growing and showing its agency, that in spite of all protocols that we were conducting in order to not let it kind of invade the lab and invade the gallery, it is still grown. Do we have some thoughts and final comments? Because I think we don't have any more questions in the chat. Maybe some final words to the audience about us, mushrooms, and I don't know, in general, how we can live together with them.
I guess my final thought is to, if you haven't explored mushrooms or fungi, hopefully this can be an entrance into the world. And yeah, the Merlin Sheldrake movie book, I forget the fungal, what is it called?
Entangled Life.
Yeah, I think that was really where I started, and I think it was a super, super helpful book. And there's also a Netflix documentary called Fantastic Fungi, which is also a really easy way to kind of learn some of these things and concepts, and then it probably will just spiral from there if you're anything like us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's for life, I think.
Yes, and that hopefully the audience also get inspired, because I think that the process that Sarah mentioned, very personal, and I also resonate with it. Like whatever that you are feeling, especially about your thoughts and brain and relationships with the world, you also have the agency to get inspired and work with others, even mushrooms, to ease that. So I do have the task for the audience next time that you are cooking mushrooms. Think about how many liters of water was needed to make it, how many molecules of energy was needed to create this little mushroom that now you are gonna eat, and that it will become part of your muscles or your protein or your thoughts. So the mushrooms will become part of the molecules to make synapses. So maybe your relationship with them can be even more fruitful than a delicious dinner. So that's my task.
Thank you. I think it's a beautiful final note, and I won't be adding anything more. It's always good to end with an instruction. Thank you so much for being here today and for participating in the exhibition. I know that we probably discussed just really small amount of all of the topics and lessons that can be learned from fungi, but I also hope that it might inspire people to learn more about the omnipresence of mushrooms and different ways how they can influence our bodies and environment around us. And yes, I think this is it. Goodbye to everyone, and have a great evening or day.
Thank you. Thank you both so much.
The same, Sarah.
Thank you. Katya, will you give us sign?